第二段再开始深海探险第二段。
And we started seeing the edge of this giant plume. Yeah, on the right, in the lower right there. That's it right there, huh?
The violently shaking camera told them this was no ordinary vent.
是晃动的，是深海摄影机，表示这个地方非常特殊哦。
Cool. Wow, look at that. What a great view.
This is the first time anybody's seen this.
Oh my God, look at that. Whoa! Holy moly. Wow. Look at that red. Holy cow. Last night, it's just jaw-dropping. And the seafloor shaking, and there's lava coming up in the vent, and there's exploding gases, and rocks are being shoved out of the way, and everybody is just going, whoa! So not only are we learning about how these eruptions happen and how they affect the environment, but it's just incredibly exciting research to witness. So that makes it really fun.
It was a geological coup, the first continuously erupting undersea volcano ever seen. Biologists were also treated to a new discovery.
On Northwest Rhoda, there are 2 species of shrimp. One of them is a brand new species, and this particular species has done incredibly well. There's very little
是有2种虾类是崭新的，是学术的新品种。
competition. Nobody else wants to live there, and yet there's a lovely food source. And so perhaps they've become cued to those volcanic emissions that other species hate, that kill them, and yet they go, aha, a whiff of sulfur, and I'm going to go down and follow that sulfur cue.
Oh, got a few in there. It's a nice big fat one on that rock there.
Gathering samples and recording new species. Such expeditions are shedding new
是采集样本，做生物性研究。
light on a relatively unknown world. Undersea mountain ranges may play a vital role in supporting marine life. Vibrant ecosystems are often found where seamounts extend near the surface. Nutrient-rich waters rise up the slopes to support everything from coral reefs to teeming schools of fish. It's a process that's still poorly understood.
这些景象呢，我们现在所了解的已经还是非常稀少，少得很可怜啊。
We know more about outer space than the perpetually dark, crushingly pressurized domain of our deep oceans.
我们对外太空了解，比我们对自身我们底下那个深渊的东西了解还多得多啊。
Alexander the Great is said to have used an inverted glass jar to dive the Mediterranean in the 4th century BC. Open-bottom diving bells were still being used well into the...
这是西元前300-400年前的亚历山大大帝，是相关的潜水钟，我们看看哦。
last century.
来看看这个历史镜头，是黑白片呢，是纪录片。
The pioneering invention known as the bathysphere appeared in 1920.
这个叫做bathysphere， 是叫潜水钟嘛 ？bathysphere 是深的意思 ，sphere 就是那个圆球的 sphere。bathysphere，northern hemisphere，southern hemisphere 的 sphere， 这叫 bathysphere， 是潜水钟。
In 1934, the 2.5-ton
是1934年。
steel ball was lowered to a depth of 923 meters.
900左右而已啊，900。
Those inside returned with fantastic reports of creatures that glowed with their own light. People were skeptical.
大沙是表示非常大的怀疑啊。
1960, a more advanced submersible carried Don Walsh and Jacques Picard.
刚刚你看的那就是德港号 Trieste， 是意大利德港号。
11 kilometers below the sea.
11哦，是11是啊，那就是11000公尺啊，是11 kilometer 是11000公尺。
Into the deepest point on Earth, known as the Challenger Deep. They stayed there for 20 minutes. No one has been back since.
That remoteness, that inaccessibility has served to protect the ocean from a great many forms of human perturbation. And it means also that we seldom appreciate how significant it is in the ecology of the whole planet. And it's home to the largest animal communities on Earth, largest in terms of number of individuals, largest in terms of number of species, largest in terms of biomass. Most of the animals on this planet live in the deep sea.
Scientist Bruce Roberson has been studying deep-sea fish since the 1970s.
这个家伙从1970年开始研究深海的鱼类啊。
I had been sampling the oceanic water column with nets the way a century's worth of my predecessors had done.
他说他很痛恨传统的那用渔网来捞捕标本，就如以往那些是先驱所做的那些方式，他痛恨。
It occurred to me that any self-respecting desert ecologist or forest ecologist would never attempt to describe the desert or the forest without ever having been there. And yet that's what I was doing.
He hitched a ride on the Alvin, the first modern research submersible in 1974.
是1974年呢。
The dive itself was a benthic dive. We were working on the seafloor, but in order to get there, you have to pass through the water column. And I kept turning on the lights, and the pilot would say, "Turn those things off. We need them for working on the bottom." But I wanted to see what was going by
到底要开灯还是关灯？
my window. I was thunderstruck. There were so many more animals than I had ever imagined, particularly the gelatinous forms. They were all over the place. They were really abundant, and they were zipping around and moving and swimming and showing all kinds of active behavior. Again, something that I was unprepared for.
He still spends around 50 days a year at sea, studying the creatures that live more than 200 meters deep.
As I used to say to my students, there's only so much you can learn from a dead fish. There's a great deal more to be learned by entering the habitat and seeing the animals in their natural environment.
是死亡的鱼跟它们是其他状况跟他们在大自然界所展现出来的面貌是截然不同的，所以到大自然去观察才是首要的，是科学步骤追求。
The North Pacific coast, just south of San Francisco, is an ideal place to start any deep water expedition.
他说是加州外海嘛，是非常理想的观察，在做这方面的观察的一个实地点啊。
The ocean floor plunges down from the shoreline. Marine life also flourishes along the coast that's part of a protected reserve. It seems that every trip leads to another new discovery. Compared to the early iron spheres and submersibles first used to probe the deep, modern-day explorers have state-of-the-art diving and imaging technology at their fingertips. On the way down, the submersible passes through the upper waters, home to familiar species like sardines, sharks, and everything between. Sunlight and oxygen support life in this upper zone. At a depth of around 200 meters, the mesopelagic or mid-water zone begins.
是所有的浮洋生物，是 pelagic 浮洋生物，非底栖也非表栖，是浮洋性生物，是浮在水中的浮洋性生物。
If any sunlight does exist, there's not enough to see or support plant life. Without any light from the sun, creatures down here make their own.
Bioluminescence is apparent in animals throughout the water column, but as you go deeper, bioluminescence becomes more and more important as the
是所谓的生物光。
only means of communication that we're aware of.
利用这种方式来传达彼此的讯息、沟通的意思。
The few creatures that can't produce their own bioluminescence harness bacteria that do.
是，他们基本上是操控跟他们共生的这些荧光细菌。
These spectral animals don't glow in the dark to see where they're going, but use light to communicate. Flashes of light are used to emit a welcome or a warning to stay away. Certain
是发光表示沟通，或者是驱逐敌人。
species of shrimp can even vomit a bioluminescent irritant that temporarily incapacitates.
甚至能够发散出那个是有刺激性的，是气味不好的，会有惊吓性的，是荧光物质。
An attacker.
My colleague Edie Witters says that, looked at objectively, bioluminescence is the most important communication form on Earth, and I'm sure she's right because of
到此再告一段落，第二段，好，待会第三段喽。
create light in order to communicate.
待会到第三段去，这是第二段。